Kruger and Kenny are amazing side characters, and they both had great introductions. But one of them had a great character setup, while the other was set up like an 80s horror movie. And no, that's not a good thing. So let's talk about it. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to do this video for a while, a video about two of my favorite characters. Yes, this is a Levi Ackerman and Eren Kruger video. Today we'll talk about their respective roles in the story, and we will see the different and unique ways Isyama used both of them to deliver his narrative. Why are they so important to the story? Who is considered a round character? Who had the worst setup and how could it be fixed? Also, who got an original anime scene, and which character do anime watchers and manga readers love more? All that is coming right up, but just so you know, this is not a competition between them. They are both amazing and they serve the story greatly. Kenny and Kruger are both side characters, and like almost every other side characters in Attack on Titan, they bring incredible depth to the story. They are completely different characters that never met each other, but still, they are very alike in their role. Both characters act as connectors between our timeline to past events. Their actions bring new information for our characters and also for us readers. But still, Isyama uses them completely different, and here is how. In Attack on Titan, we mostly learn about past events through memories, and those mostly happen to Eren. We learn about certain characters and events from Eren's perspective. That is the case of Eren Kruger. We never saw the actual memories of Kruger besides that glimpse of him watching his family burned to death. Instead, he got introduced through Grisha's past, which was revealed to us because of Eren's memories. In a way, Kruger was never a leading player in his story. He was always a side character in someone else's story. And that's mostly because we never got a first-person perspective from him. We only saw him through Grisha and Eren. More on that soon, but let's take a look at Kenny, which is the complete opposite from Kruger in that aspect. Unlike Kruger, Kenny's actions and desires were much more established. That's why we can understand them better. We knew what he wanted and we knew what he was thinking. We heard him express his opinions, and we even got to see his internal monologue. We got to see him change and develop as a person and as a character. We saw him at his strongest moments and also in his weakest ones. We know what he wants, we know what he's afraid of, and we know what and who he respects. Unlike Kruger, Kenny was the leading player in his story. He presented the story through his own eyes, and because of that, we know much more about him and his background. That makes Kenny a round character. A round character in writing means the character has depth and complexities that are apparent throughout the story. As I mentioned, we usually get information about the past through Eren's memories, which can sometimes be someone else's memories, but there were a few characters that shared past information themselves. Just like Ymir, Historia, Reiner, Keith Shadis, and a few others, Kenny also brought new and crucial information through his own flashback, from his own point of view and perspective. That made him very important to the narrative, and his actions advanced the plot tremendously. He unraveled the conspiracy that took place 107 years ago, the persecution of other races inside the walls, the power of the king, and of course, Levi's true name, which was unknown even to Levi himself before he met Kenny again. And that's how Levi learned his last name for the first time, only when he was in his 30s. Kenny was so popular that he even got his own original animated fight against Levi. That fight between them in the cave never actually took place in the manga, so it was a treat to manga readers and anime watchers alike. So it seems that Kenny was a very established character, and I can't argue with that. He's pretty much perfect for the most part, and that brings me to his character setup. A character setup is basically a way to announce an upcoming character, special power, or major event. A character setup doesn't need to be specific, it can simply be a small reference to create tension and a sense of anticipation. One example is Demon Slayer, marking the demons as upper and lower moons and assigning them numbers. That way, when you fight someone really strong and suddenly you discover they are lower moons, that gives the character and also us, the audience, something to look forward to, because we know now there is someone much stronger out there, and we know we are going to meet some of those other numbers and upper moons. That's why when we meet Akaza, we know he's probably a freaking monster. And by the way, that goes for the Hashira as well. And really, this is enough. It doesn't need to be extremely deep, but it must be mentioned at least once, somehow, before the character appears. If it doesn't, it gives us the feeling of an unreliable scene, which is very known in old school horror movies. What do I mean? We have all seen a movie where a group of people, which are usually teenagers, go to some party in some deserted location or some weird cabin. The moment they come in, and as soon as someone turns on the radio or television, it will always land on the news report, warning people from some killer out there on the loose. The same killer that is going to attack this group very soon. One of our characters got the same character setup as the killer in that cabin. I am of course talking about Kenny. I already established Kenny is a terrific character, it's only his setup that is a bit weak, and it goes something like this. Hey Nifa, do you know Kenny the Reaper? Oh no, I thought he was a legend. No, he's not. Boom! Kenny arrives and Nifa gets shot in the face. That leads to an incredible clash between Levi and Kenny, and we all know the rest.
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
I must be fair and say it was mostly an issue with the anime, because in the manga it did appear one chapter before that. But still, let me remind you that Kenny was kinda famous. That's why Nifa referred to him as a legend. So you would expect someone to mention him somewhere in the story, even before that, even in previous seasons. He was so notorious for killing 100 military police soldiers on his own that people started making stories about him, and with all that, he wasn't mentioned or hinted even once in this entire story. And yes, Levi did talk about him a bit on the roof, but in total it was only 2 panels until he showed up. I have a very easy fix for this. Remember in the first season when Jean, Connie and a lot of other cadets still wanted to join the military police? Jean bragged about it a lot, so all Isyama had to do is make some cadet ask Jean if he's not worried about the Reaper, the same Reaper that seems to target only the military police. Jean would probably say he's just a legend and end it with that. That way, Kenny showing up would have felt more familiar and dramatic. But I would say it carefully because I can't really prove it. But if I had to guess, I would say Isyama created Kenny later in the story, and that's why he didn't have a chance to mention him. Not to mention he was never even brought up in Levi's backstory, no regrets. I believe Isyama needed some way to connect and show the past events in the Uprising arc, and also make it interesting enough because it had almost no titans. I think Kenny came up to deliver exactly that, and that is also why he got an extra, original animated scene with Levi. That's why he fits into the story perfectly, even if he had a weak setup. And if I am right about this, then Isyama is truly a genius. He took a new character and fit her into the story so organically, in a way it felt like it was always supposed to be there. And as you know, Isyama does change things here and there, like Pretty Peak, which originally was planned to be an older male, and that's why her titan used to look like this. Unlike Kenny, Kruger had an incredible setup, and by Kruger I mean the owl because they are the same person. His setup was also close to his actual introduction, but it was done differently than in Kenny's case, and in my opinion, it was done perfectly. The manga only hinted about a mysterious figure called the Owl, who was delivering information to the Eldian restorationists. Kruger was actually shown to us in the story before his big reveal, but he was always just a regular Marleyan soldier. Years later, on top of the wall, Grisha was about to be pushed down by Gross. It was a very intense scene. I still remember reading it and feeling anxious seeing Grisha in this condition, and I will never forget this page turn when I saw one of my favorite moments of Kruger pushing Gross and tossing his hat. I am the Owl. And that is, my friends, a great setup with a great payoff, planned perfectly to the point of climax. Learning that we all have seen this owl before, and finally learning his name. Not a complicated setup, but still you can see the difference, and this is why this scene is so special, also in the anime. As I mentioned, unlike Kenny who brought the story from his own perspective, Kruger's story comes from the second person point of view with Grisha, and as a third person point of view through Eren Yeager's memories. These are also presented to us readers and viewers. That is an extremely special and complex way to deliver a narrative, which is also why we know more about Kenny than we know about Kruger. We know he wished to pass his titan in order to keep the fight for Eldia alive, but that's it. We don't know about his life, if he had any wife, kids or anything else he wanted or cared for in his past. Why didn't he try to reach Paradise on his own all those years he had his titan, and where did he even get it from? Of course, we can always theorize, as I did, but that's about all we can do.
Kenny gets to evolve as a character. He gets to experience his fears and express his emotions, which makes us understand him better. Kruger doesn't have this luxury, and it's better this way because his part in the story is already very crucial, but that's also why Kenny feels a bit deeper as a character. He's a round character, he has layers, like an ogre. But here's something strange. Kruger did some terrible things like every one of our characters, but in his case it always felt a bit different because I can tell you right now, I have never met a manga reader who doesn't like Kruger's character. Not a single one. Correct me if I'm wrong about this. And by the way, I agree because I obviously feel the same, but that doesn't seem to be the case for anime watchers, and I think I know why. For anime watchers, Kruger was a passing character. They only got to meet him for a few episodes that lasted for a few weeks, while manga readers had to wait a month between each chapter. We used to have discussions, debates, and videos theorizing about characters, so arguably, manga readers got to experience Kruger for months, which gave us time to talk about him more than anime watchers got to. But that is just my little theory, and if you are an anime watcher and you think differently, please let me know in the comments. At the end of the day, Kruger and Kenny served the story tremendously. Each had his strengths and weaknesses as a character, but in the grand scope of the story, they were absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for joining me today, my Titan-loving friends, and I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to tell me what you think about this video in the comments, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. I will see you all real soon in my next video and even sooner in the comments. But until then, let me just remind you all to dedicate your hearts to humanity, inside and outside the walls.